The most authentic people you know are playing a character. They just know they're doing it. Jung discovered something that sounds like a contradiction. To become your true self, you first have to master being fake. Not fake as in dishonest, fake as in consciously constructed, deliberately designed, strategically chosen. While everyone else is trapped inside one unconscious identity they think is them, the people who reach their full potential build multiple identities and deploy them like tools. They're method actors in their own life, and that's exactly why they're free. Today you'll learn Jung's hidden teaching about the persona, not as something to destroy, but as something to master. Because the difference between a prison and a vehicle is whether you know you're inside it. And the moment you understand this, you'll realize why trying to just be yourself has been keeping you stuck. Here's what nobody tells you about identity. You're already fake. You're already performing. You're already wearing a mask. Jung called it the persona, from the Latin word for the masks actors wore in ancient theater. The only question is whether you're conscious of your performance or enslaved by it. Most people think they're being authentic, but they're just playing a character they learned so young they forgot they're acting. The good student, the rebel, the helper, the achiever. They think that's who they are, but it's just who they learned to be to survive. Jung's radical insight wasn't that we should drop all masks. He knew that was impossible and even dangerous. His insight was that we should consciously choose our masks, build them deliberately, use them strategically, and most importantly, remember we're wearing them. Because here's the paradox: the people who know they're playing roles are the most authentic, and the people who think they're just being themselves are the most fake. This isn't about deception. It's about conscious creation, and it starts with understanding what Jung really meant by individuation. Let me destroy your biggest illusion. The you think you are doesn't exist. Jung spent decades studying this. That personality you're so attached to, it's just a collection of adaptations you made to survive childhood. That identity you defend so fiercely, it's just patterns that got reinforced by accident. Think about it. Why are you the way you are? Because when you were 3, being quiet got you love, so you became the quiet one. Or being funny deflected tension, so you became the comedian. Or being perfect got you attention, so you became the achiever. These aren't choices. They're survival strategies that calcified into identity. Jung called this the unconscious persona, a mask you put on so early you forgot you're wearing it. You think it's your face, but it's just something that it got stuck to you. And here's the tragic part. You're living your entire life serving this accidental identity. Every decision you make is filtered through this false self. Would a quiet person do this? Is this what an achiever would choose? Does this fit my identity? You're not living your life, you're living your persona's life. But here's where Jung's insight becomes revolutionary. Once you realize your current identity is already constructed, you can construct a better one, or multiple better ones, on purpose. See, the problem isn't having a persona. The problem is having only one, and forgetting it's a construction. Jung himself had multiple personas: the doctor, the mystic, the scholar, the artist. He knew he was playing these roles, which meant he wasn't trapped by any of them. He could be the serious psychiatrist in his practice and the wild visionary in his red book. Both fake, both real, both serving his individuation. This is what most people miss about Jung. He wasn't against personas. He was against unconscious identification with personas. There's a massive difference. When you unconsciously identify with your persona, you're its slave. You can't do anything that violates its rules. You can't grow beyond its limits. You're trapped in a character you didn't even choose. But when you consciously construct personas, you're the master. You can put them on for specific purposes, take them off when they're not serving, build new ones as you evolve. Think of it like this. An actor playing Hamlet isn't lying when they're on stage. They're consciously embodying a character for a purpose. They know they're not really Hamlet, which paradoxically allows them to be Hamlet more fully than someone who thinks they are Hamlet. This is the first key to reaching your potential. Realize you're already playing a character. You just forgot you were acting. Once you remember, you can rewrite the script. Here's what Jung understood that modern self-help doesn't. Different situations require different selves. You wouldn't use a hammer to paint a picture or a paintbrush to build a house. So, why do you think one identity can handle every situation in your life? Jung discovered that the people who reach their full potential don't have one strong identity. They have multiple strategic personas they deploy consciously. They're like psychological Swiss Army knives, pulling out the right tool for the right moment. But here's the crucial part. These aren't random masks. They're deliberately designed vehicles for specific aspects of your potential. Let me give you an example Jung would have loved. Say you're naturally introverted, but you want to build a business. Instead of forcing your real self to network and sell, which feels like self-betrayal, you create a strategic persona. The connector, the value creator, whatever resonates. This isn't fake in the deceptive sense. It's fake in the constructed sense. You're building a vehicle that allows parts of your potential to express that your current identity blocks. When you put on this persona, you're not lying. You're exploring. You're experimenting with aspects of yourself that exist in potential but haven't been actualized. You're using the persona as a bridge to parts of yourself you can't otherwise access. Jung saw this in his patients constantly. The timid person who created a confident persona for public speaking and eventually integrated real confidence. The logical person who created an artistic persona and discovered genuine creativity. The serious person who created a playful persona and found authentic joy. The persona was the permission slip, the training wheels, the scaffold that allowed the real growth to happen. But here's what makes this Jungian and not just fake it till you make it. You never forget you're wearing the persona. You don't identify with it, you use it. Like a musician uses an instrument to express music that already exists within them. This conscious use of personas serves three functions. First, it protects your real self while you grow. You can take risks with your persona that would terrify your ego. If the persona fails, you're not destroyed. You just adjust the character. It's psychological armor that allows you to enter battles you'd otherwise avoid. Second, it allows you to access dormant potentials. Every persona you create is an experiment in becoming. You're not pretending to be something you're not. You're discovering what you could be. The persona is a probe sent into possibility space. Third, it accelerates individuation. By consciously playing different roles, you discover what's role and what's real. You find the self that exists behind all personas. You become the actor, not the character. Jung himself did this constantly. He had his number one personality, the Swiss doctor, and his number two personality, the mystic sage. He knew both were constructions. And that knowledge freed him to be both fully without being trapped by either. Your fake identity isn't a mask. It's a laboratory for becoming. Jung discovered that when you consciously construct a persona, something magical happens. You create a safe space to experiment with parts of yourself that your ego would never allow. Think of it like a psychological flight simulator. Pilots don't learn to fly by immediately jumping into a real plane during a storm. They use simulators, fake environments where they can crash without dying, make mistakes without consequences, push limits without disaster. Your strategic persona is exactly this, a simulator for selfhood. Let's say you've always been the responsible one. This identity has served you, but it's also imprisoned you. You can't be spontaneous. You can't make mistakes. You can't explore. Your ego won't allow it because it threatens your entire identity structure. So you build a persona, the explorer, the wild one, the free spirit, whatever calls to you. When you put on this persona, you're not betraying your true self. You're giving yourself permission to explore aspects of your true self that your current identity blocks. You can be irresponsible in contained ways, make calculated mistakes, follow impulses you usually suppress. And here's what Jung found. The lessons learned in the persona laboratory integrate into your real self, but, and this is crucial, only if you stay conscious that you're experimenting. If you forget you're wearing a persona and start believing you are it, you've just traded one prison for another. You've gone from being trapped as the responsible one to being trapped as the wild one. No growth, just costume change. But if you stay conscious, something profound happens. You realize responsibility and wildness aren't identities, they're capacities. You can access both. You can be both. You contain both. This is what Jung meant by the transcendent function. The ability to hold opposites without choosing sides. And you develop this through conscious persona work. Here's a practical example. Jung had a patient, a successful businessman who was psychologically dying from being trapped in his serious executive persona. Jung didn't tell him to quit his job and become an artist. He told him to create an artistic persona and spend 2 hours a week in that character. The man started painting under a pseudonym, went to art classes as his artist self, even dressed differently during these times. He knew he was playing a role, which made it safe to be terrible at art, to be playful, to fail. Within 6 months, creativity started showing up in his business life. Not because he became an artist, but because he discovered he contained artistry. The persona was the doorway. The creativity was already inside. This is the power of the persona laboratory. It lets you discover what's already in you, but buried under identity. Jung went even further with this. He developed a technique called active imagination, where he would dialogue with different personas within himself. He'd literally write conversations between different aspects of his psyche, each speaking from their own character. The wise old man, the shadow, the anima. He gave them names, personalities, voices, not because he was crazy, but because he was consciously crazy. He was using controlled madness to achieve sanity. When you build fake identities consciously, you're doing the same thing. You're giving voice to aspects of yourself that have been silenced. You're letting parts of you live that have been dying. Here's the counterintuitive truth. The more fake identities you build, the more real you become. Jung discovered that people who only have one identity, even if it's authentic, are actually the most fragmented. They have identified with one part of themselves and rejected everything else. They're whole in appearance, but partial in reality. But people who consciously create multiple personas discover something profound. Behind all the masks is something that isn't a mask. Behind all the characters is something that isn't a character. Behind all the personas is the self. This is the paradox of individuation. You find your true self not by stripping away all personas, but by consciously wielding many personas until you realize what remains constant behind them all. Think of it like this. If you only speak one language, you might think that language is thought itself. But when you learn multiple languages, you discover thought exists beyond language. Language is just a vehicle. Same with personas. If you only have one, you think it's you. But when you consciously create multiple personas, you discover the you that exists beyond all personas. Jung called this the self with a capital S. Not another persona, but the organizing principle behind all personas, the director of the play, not another character in it. But here's what most people get wrong about this. You don't find the self by rejecting personas. You find it by mastering them. Like a martial artist doesn't find their true nature by avoiding combat, but by mastering multiple fighting styles until they embody the principle behind all techniques. Each persona you consciously create and deploy teaches you something. What parts of you are universal, present in every persona? What parts are contextual, only in specific personas? What parts are essential, can't be removed without losing yourself? What parts are optional, can be added or removed at will? This is integration through multiplication. Instead of trying to be one unified self, which is impossible and wouldn't even be desirable, you become consciously multiple, and in that multiplicity, you find unity. Jung lived this way. In the morning, he might be Dr. Jung seeing patients. In the afternoon, the mystic Jung exploring his unconscious. In the evening, the family man, Jung, with his children. All fake in the sense of being constructed, all real in the sense of being consciously chosen. He wasn't fragmented because he knew he was doing it. He was the conscious director of his own psychological theater. This is what reaching your full potential actually means. Not becoming one perfect version of yourself, but becoming capable of accessing all versions of yourself as needed. The businessman who can access the artist, the introvert who can access the entertainer, the logical one who can access the mystic, not through force or self-betrayal, but through conscious persona construction. You build bridges to your own potential. The end goal isn't to find your real identity. It's to become psychologically fluid. Jung's ultimate vision wasn't a person with one authentic self, but someone who could fluidly move between different modes of being while maintaining conscious awareness. Like water that can be ice, liquid, or steam while remaining H2O. This is what individuation actually leads to, not a fixed identity, but conscious fluidity. The ability to be whoever you need to be in any moment without losing yourself, because you know none of it is ultimately you. Think about the greatest performers, leaders, creators in history. They weren't stuck in one mode. Einstein could be the rigorous physicist and the playful philosopher. Jung could be the empirical scientist and the mystical explorer. They had achieved psychological fluidity. But here's the crucial distinction. This isn't the same as having no identity or being wishy-washy. It's having such a strong connection to yourself, capital S, that you can play any role without getting lost in it. It's like being an actor who's mastered their craft so completely they can play any character convincingly while never forgetting their acting. They're simultaneously completely in character and completely aware they're performing. Jung discovered that this state, conscious fluidity, is where full potential lives. Because potential isn't about becoming one thing. It's about being able to become anything that serves your purpose in the moment. Need to be assertive? You can access that persona. Need to be nurturing? That's available too. Need to be analytical? You can shift into that mode. Need to be creative? You can flow into that state. You're not limited by identity. You're liberated through conscious multiplicity. But here's what makes this Jungian and not just relativistic. There's still a core. The self remains constant. It's the awareness behind all personas, the consciousness that chooses which mask to wear, the organizing principle that maintains coherence despite the fluidity. This is why building fake identities paradoxically leads to authenticity. Each persona you create and master increases your range while strengthening your connection to what doesn't change, your essential self. Jung saw this as the ultimate psychological development, not someone who's found themselves, but someone who's transcended the need for a fixed self while maintaining perfect awareness of who's behind all the masks. So, how do you actually do this? How do you build fake identities that serve your growth? Jung's method was systematic, not random. Here's the process. First, identify where your current identity limits you. Where do you say, "I can't do that. It's not me"? Where do you feel trapped by who you've become? These limitation points are where you need new personas. Second, design a persona that specifically addresses that limitation. If you're trapped in seriousness, create the playful one. If you're trapped in logic, create the intuitive. Don't try to be balanced. Create an extreme opposite to your current extreme. Third, give this persona a name, a backstory, even different clothes if it helps. This isn't silly, it's psychological technology. The more detailed the persona, the easier it is to step into it. Jung would even give his personas different names and write from their perspectives. Fourth, schedule specific times to embody this persona. Start with 1 hour a week. During this time, you are this character. Make decisions as them, move as them, speak as them. But, and this is crucial, maintain the witness consciousness that knows you're playing a role. Fifth, journal the experience afterward. What did this persona allow you to access? What did you discover? What felt foreign? What felt surprisingly natural? This reflection is where integration happens. Sixth, gradually expand the persona's territory. Let it influence other areas of your life, not by taking over, but by offering its perspective. Ask yourself, what would persona name do here? You're not becoming the persona, you're integrating its gifts. Jung did this with what he called his number 2 personality, his mystical intuitive side that his rational number 1 personality initially rejected. By consciously giving it space, time, and voice, he integrated capacities that made his work revolutionary. There's a danger here that Jung was very clear about. If you forget you're wearing a mask, the mask wears you. The difference between conscious persona construction and psychological possession is awareness. The moment you forget you're playing a role, you're trapped in it. The moment you believe you are the persona, it becomes another prison. This is why Jung emphasized the witness consciousness, the part of you that observes yourself playing roles. This witness must never sleep. It's what keeps you free. Some people get addicted to persona creation, constantly inventing new selves but never integrating them. They become psychological shapeshifters with no core. This isn't individuation, it's fragmentation. Others use personas to avoid facing their shadow. They create positive personas to compensate for rejected aspects instead of integrating them. This just deepens the split. The key is remembering. Personas are tools for becoming, not escapes from being. They're vehicles for integration, not alternatives to it. Here's what changes when you master this. You stop being imprisoned by who you've been and start consciously creating who you're becoming. Your potential isn't locked behind finding your true self. It's accessed through consciously building and wielding multiple selves while maintaining awareness of the self behind them all. The most authentic people aren't those who've stripped away all masks. They're those who've mastered the art of conscious masking. They know they're performing, which makes them real. They know they're constructed, which makes them free. Most people will hear this and think it's about being fake or manipulative. They'll keep searching for their authentic self, not realizing they're already wearing a mask, just unconsciously. But some of you will recognize the liberation in this. You'll see that conscious persona construction isn't about deception. It's about expansion. Not about being fake, but about being deliberately designed. If you're ready to explore this deeper, to actually build strategic personas that unlock your potential, subscribe for more Jungian psychology. And to understand the shadow work that makes this possible, click the video on your screen now. Remember what Jung discovered. You're already playing a character. The only question is whether you're conscious enough to rewrite the script. Your full potential isn't waiting for you to find yourself. It's waiting for you to build selves that can access it. The stage is set. The audience is waiting. Time to become the conscious director of your own psychological theater.